Greetings, grave robbers, and welcome back to the television graveyard, live on Twitch. I am your TV necromancer, TV's Noah Houlihan. We have gathered here live on Twitch to dig up the bodies of past television shows that ran one season or less, some running just one episode. This will be a podcast to see which ones could be resurrected, should be resurrected, and which one should just stay doomed. Live on Twitch! Yes, we're recording this one live on Twitch. We mentioned that our lives, Laura and our lives, are very crazy as of late, and finding time to record is small and precious. So I stream every weekday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time on Plus 2 Comedy on Twitch, and I'm going to use this time to record a little podcast about Strictly for Laughs, a 1962 pilot hosted by Dave Barry and his Dave Barry and his friends. So this is an interesting show, and I'm going to be honest with you. I did this because I'm a big stand-up guy. I'm a stand-up nut, and I'm a stand-up comedian. So I thought I'd have a lot to say about this. This is a round-table comedy show. So I believe this might even be the first round-table comedy show. What is a round-table comedy show? It is where you bring in a bunch of funny people. You sit around a table and you chat about different topics. The most famous one is probably Bill Maher, or Politically Incorrect. I think it's just called Bill Maher now that he's on HBO. But Politically Incorrect was a show on ABC where he would bring various comedians on. They would discuss topics, and the whole point was that you were being politically incorrect. You could say whatever you want about the topics. Nothing was off the table. That show got canceled because Bill Maher was politically incorrect. He said something about how America was being cowardly in the way it was handling 9/11. And ABC canceled the show and it moved to HBO. Another version of this show that you might be aware of is Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn. This was the Comedy Central version of this show with Colin Quinn, who you might know from Weekend Update on SNL. He was a big SNL guy for a little while. There's also a version of this that I believe was on Showtime that I actually really enjoyed called The Green Room, where it is a bunch of stand-up comics talking, but they're talking more about the craft of comedy. That's not what's happening here. This is a bunch of stand-up comedians sitting around, or comedians, just sitting around telling jokes to one another. I will be completely honest with you. If we didn't watch this live, if I wasn't currently live on Twitch with people watching who watched this along with me to discuss this very episode, I would cancel this episode. Because this is a very weird thing to do for Stay Doomed. So let's just try to jump into this. So our host is Dave Barry. It's actually introduced that it is Dave Barry and his friends is what this show is going to be. Dan is known for Some Like It Hot, which some consider to be the very funniest movie of all time with Marilyn Monroe. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show as well. He's a stand-up comedian. Now, what kind of attracted me to this show is the friends that were listed on IMDb that were going to be part of this, because there's some really big heavy hitters in this. There's Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc is famously the voice of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, who I have tremendous respect for. We got Fred Flintstone himself. Alan Reed is on this show. Also, we have Rosemarie is the only female that they have on the show. She is a legend. You might know her from Dick Van Dyke. I also found out that she is the voice of Norma Bates in the Psycho remake. Mo Howard is listed as being on this show. Mo from The Three Stooges. If Mo appeared on this show, I completely missed Mo. And then there's a couple names that I'm not as familiar with. Ken Murray, Buddy Lester, Paul Gilbert. So this is, a 60s TV show, an early 60s TV show. So I might not be up on the early 60s, late 50s stand-up comedy scene. But it seems to me like they don't really know how comedy works yet. It's a very interesting scenario. So basically, we start with Dave Barry telling a joke about being in the hospital. And he name drops a bunch of famous comedians.
Fellas, may I tell you how wonderful it is to have comedians on the show, because I have a great personal like for comedians. A couple of weeks ago, I wasn't feeling well, and I was in a hospital. Some of the biggest name comedians came to see me, Jerry Lewis and Milton Berle and Bob Hope and even Jack Benny. And there's one of the sweetest guys I've ever met in my life. And you know, he brought me a basket of fruit and flowers. Must have cost at least $100. And he let me have it for only $62.50.
That is the opening joke. And then he gets up from the table and he's like,
"Welcome to Strictly for Laughs, starring Dave Barry and his friends."
Thank you, and how do you do, ladies and gentlemen? You're all invited to join my party here, to which I've invited some wonderful friends of mine, professional comedians. We're going to have a storytelling session that we really hope you'll enjoy.
That was such a planned moment. Like, it was very clear that he was going to get up and introduce everyone after that joke. It's interesting to me that that is the joke that they went with. It's just a joke about celebrities kind of being mean. Like, it's silly, it's weird. I think they just wanted to be able to drop Jerry Lewis's name in this to kind of create the illusion that maybe Jerry Lewis would be in the show. And I will get more into that later. But he introduces the panel, and it's Alan Reed, Fred Flintstone, Sidney Morton, and Paul Gilbert. And they just kind of sit down, and it's not a discussion. It's just them telling jokes. And not like with any cohesion. Like the first guy says...
I like the one that a woman went to see a psychiatrist, and she says, "Doctor, I want you to help me out." He said, "Well, what seems to be the trouble?" She says, "I'm always forgetting things. What should I do?" He says, "Pay me in advance." I like.
It is a joke. It is a successful joke that makes sense. It's a street joke. A street joke is anything that you can kind of tell on the street. You don't really need to be a stand-up comic to do it, because it has no personal relation to you, really. It's just a joke you can tell. And we've kind of moved away that type of comedy. Like, the last stand-up comedian that I really can think of that was getting away with that was Rodney Dangerfield, who would talk about his doctor, Dr. Betty Boom Bops. And they were just doctor jokes like that one. Like, they were clearly made up, and they were just kind of fun and silly. So maybe like a Stephen Wright or a Mitch Hedberg or Dimitri Martin kind of does these. But these are very much just like, you don't need to have the pizzazz of a Mitch Hedberg to make these jokes work. They're just kind of street jokes. The next one then just jumps to...
He went to the psychiatrist and he said, all my life I've been a short fella, you know, and he says, my friends, my business associates look down upon me, and every time I dance with my wife, it's ridiculous, you know. He says, I feel so bad about it, it's really bugging me. He says, psychiatrist says, what are you, Napoleon, 4'11", conquered almost the whole world. It's Benjamin Franklin, a short fella. A lot of big people have been short people. And he says, the main thing is mental. He says, think you're big. Say to yourself, I'm big, I'm a big person, and you'll be big. You'll project this feeling. So he's walking down the street from the psychiatrist's office, and he's going by. He said, I'm a big man. I'm tall. I'm a big person. I'm big. And he walked by an alley, and a cat ate him.
Because he's actually quite small. This is a good, like, little kid joke. Like, I think this would work on, like, a first grader. But, like, this is a pilot for a national television show, and these are the jokes that you're telling. And... then another one was talking about a man goes missing. And here's another thing about these jokes. I teach stand-up comedy. And a thing I say in stand-up comedy is, if you're not getting a laugh by sentence 3, you need to work on your joke. Because with the way attention spans are today, like, a setup that needs more than 3 sentences before you hit a punchline, that joke better be incredible. It better tear the house down. And, like, in my writing, I've written jokes where, like, I have 4 or 5 sentences of setup before the punchline, and all that really meant was I got to find a punchline in my setup so I could slip a little joke in before I get into the next thing. And he tells this joke about how a man goes missing in the woods. Actually, you know what? Let me tell it my way. This is how I would tell this joke. Ready? Man goes missing in the woods. Everyone's looking for him. And a helicopter finds him and says, "Hey, we're the Red Cross. Get to a safe area. We need to talk to you." And he replies, "No, I gave it the office." 3 sentences, really. Man's missing. Red Cross finds him. He thinks that they're asking for money. Done. He goes on for quite some time, and he's also constantly mispronouncing the word helicopter as helicopter, which I will never understand.
Sam Rappaport, the doctor, says you got to have exercise, you got to get out. So he decides to go up to the high Sierras for fishing and hiking. And he's gone for about a week, and his wife's worried about him. She thinks he's lost. So she sends out a missing persons report, and the Red Cross organized a big search with helicopters and walkie-talkies on the ground. And finally, the helicopter sees him in a clearing up high on a mountain, and they talk down to the walkie-talkie, and they come up to him, and there they are. And the man sees him at a campfire across a chasm, and he hollers, "It's all right, Mr. Rappaport. We're here. We're the Red Cross." He hollers, "Go back, go back. I already contributed at the store."
The fact that he has to have all this build-up, it already feels like the show's trying to stretch. And it's comedy from another time. Attention spans were longer, and there was a time where it was kind of fun in comedy to do these big build jokes and then hit you with the punchline. There was a joke that was making it around the rounds when I was in high school, where the joke was to see how long you could tell the setup before you got to the punchline. And the punchline was just simply F you or something. But the whole point of it was to see how much time you could waste. Where it's this is the story of Bill. Bill doesn't like peas. His wife likes peas, but he doesn't like peas. One day he goes to the circus and go on and on and on and on. And it's almost like that is a joke. And, I'm in high school in the early 2000s. That's making fun of this style of comedy. This is the comedy of the 1960s that is long-winded and not direct and doesn't have the punch that it needs to really make an impact. Someone that makes a joke about the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb comes in 3 sizes: small, medium, and where did everybody go? It's at least kind of topical and quick, but I'm not from that time, so it might not have the effect that it has on me. And then we get a joke from Alan, Fred Flintstone, about 3 dogs. And he gets interrupted during this, which is weird. Someone's trying to riff with him, and you can tell the feeling in the room is shut up and let him tell his joke.
3 dogs, little dogs, who are on the corner of Hollywood and Vine.
You can use their real names if you want to.
No, they're just playing. Their real names are, one of them is an English bulldog. Now, one of them's an English bulldog, and the other one's a French poodle, and the other one's a Russian wolfhound.
Which is not conducive to what the show's presenting as being. But his joke is simply there's an English bulldog, a French poodle, and a Russian, what's a Russian dog? A Russian setter. And the English dog is complaining about his country. The French dog complains about his country. He does fun dog and accents. And the Russian dog says his country is great. But then they ask, well, then why are you here? And he goes, because I like to bark. I don't know if this is me not getting a joke. Maybe in Soviet Russia you weren't allowed to, speak your mind is the joke. But, this is Russia in 1962. A lot of stuff is going on in 1962. I mean, we are amidst the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm sure that there is something that I'm missing. when it comes to like the story of Russia in 1962. That would have been very prevalent. But, it's the death of comedy. Like, comedy doesn't live very long. And here I am trying to resurrect it and watch it here. Then we get this very interesting moment where our host, Dave, is like, we have a very special message for you. And it fades out and then fades back in, which I think means that the commercials are cut out of this. Because it's just a pilot, an unsold pilot, so I don't think this aired anywhere. But when we come back, it's an entirely different panel. Like, now we have Rose here. Now we have, I believe Mel Blanc might be here at this point. But it's an entirely different group of people, and they're all doing animal jokes. We get a joke about how a little boy is very sad that his turtle died, and his dad was like, again, I'll do my version of this joke. A little boy was sad that his turtle died, and his father came up to him and saw him crying and said, "Don't worry, son, we're going to have the biggest funeral possible for him. We're going to bring all your friends over, we'll have cake, we'll have ice cream, and we will make sure that your turtle gets the send-off that he deserves." And at that moment, the turtle flipped back over and was alive. And the little boy said, "Can we kill him?" It works as a joke. It's like one sentence too long in my version of it. The version he tells...
Listen, I have another kid story I'd like to tell you about this kid that loved animals. And the father took him to a fair. And this kid was wild, mad about animals. And he took him to a fair and bought him a little turtle with his name on the back, And the kid went crazy, always crazy about the turtle, took him home, and the father built him in the backyard, the most beautiful rock pool with the water and the falls and the little turtle is on, and just like a human being, this turtle. Just like a human. Every morning when the kid go to school, the turtle would hear the kid come down and go up to the side and nuzzle the kid's finger, and the kid go to school, he'd come back after school, and the kid would open the turtle would hear the gate open, right up to the side and look at him and everything. This went on for weeks, and finally one morning the kid came down and walked up to the pool, and there's the turtle on his back, stiff and stark. And so he looks down, and the tears started to come to his eyes, and his daddy walked over to him and he said, "Now, wait a minute, son, now. Don't you worry. You know what we're going to do?" He said, "We're going to have the best funeral in the whole world for this turtle." He said, "We're going upstairs and get Mommy's jewel case, this beautiful red jewel case, and we're going to lay the little turtle in it." He said, "We're going to invite everybody, all the kids that you know up and down the block out of school, everything. We're going to have ice cream, cake. We're going to have merry-go-rounds. We're going to have horses and ponies and everything." Just then the turtle turned over and started to swim, and the kid looked down and he says, "Let's kill him."
It's insane how much is going on here. Like, for such a simple show, for these skilled comedians to not know how to do it, absolutely crazy. Rose has a pretty good joke about a drunk that's in the park.
Now, this is a story of a drunk that's sitting on a park bench, and there's a whole bunch of pigeons all around. And so all of a sudden, the drunk looks down, all these pigeons, and he says, "Here, fishy, 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 fishy." And one of the little pigeons starts waddling over, and he says, No, come on over here, little fishy. Come on right over here, little fishy. And the little pigeon starts waddling over and stops right in front of the drunk. And the drunk looks down and he says, "Any messages?"
It's a joke about carrier pigeons. Makes sense. It's easy. The host, though, then says something that I can't believe. The host says...
Great. Some of the stuff they have about animals is real cute.
As a stand-up comedian, cute is one of the worst words to hear. If you ever go to see a stand-up comedian, or a friend of yours is trying stand-up, never, ever go up to them and say one of these two things. One, what you did was really cute, because that means that it's juvenile, and it means that it was like simple and like jokes for children, like that you weren't clever. It was cute. The other one that the host doesn't say, but I'm just going to add this, never tell a stand-up comedian that he's brave. Like, "Oh, wow, it takes a lot of guts to go up there and on stage." That's just code for you bombed. Yeah, you bombed really hard. How are you alive? Like, if I was you, I'd be so embarrassed. You must be really brave, because you went up there and tried to make people laugh and failed and just had to stand there while we all stared at you. You're really brave. Anyway, we then get a whole new panel again. A new panel just appears, and this is important. When we get a new panel, they are not introduced. We don't get, like, their credits. We don't even get their names. It's just like, all right, and we're back. So, an Englishman was going to get hung. And just before they hung him, the last words were, "Can I get a Windsor knot?" Again, it's almost a joke, but I don't get it. Like, this group at least does, like, a lot of quick jokes. Like, my friend said that I was a hard drinker. I disagree. It's one of the easiest things I do. Bing, bang, boom, cool. Yes, that's what stand-up is. Stand-up should be quick punches. It shouldn't be this weird, long story thing. We then get... This guy goes back to the well where he's just like, hey, another guy was getting hung. I was like, to kind of, like, put this in perspective. Like, he tells another joke about someone being hung, which is simply like, he's about to be hung and he shouts, "What day is it?" And someone yells to him, "It's Monday." And he goes, what a way to start the week. Quick joke, makes sense. But it seems like this is like a formula of jokes at the time. Like, guy's about to get hung, he says something silly. It's kind of along the lines of, like, why did the chicken cross the road? Or, knock, knock, who's there? You might be a redneck. Like, it's just like, this is the formula, and we're just going to spin it, because you can pump a lot of jokes out of this single formula. You might even say that it's an early meme. Like, you could post the picture of, what's his name? James Franco's brother with the noose around his neck where he goes, "First time." And you could just put these quotes over it, and it would work as a joke. It would. But, like, they're not strong jokes. Dave then brings us to, I guess, commercial again with a woman calls her doctor and says, "Can I have chicken noodle soup?" And the doctor says, "No, you can't." He goes, "Can I have clam chowder?" He's like, "Yeah, you can have clam chowder." She went, "All right, that's fine." And then he hangs up and the doctor says, "She should have asked about the clam chowder first, because then she'd be allowed to have the chicken." And I guess the joke is, like, doctors are douchebags that are just wielding power and telling you what to do and don't actually have your health in mind. Which I guess was just the sediment of the 1960s. Again, I don't understand. We then get a brand new panel again. And this is probably the strangest part of the whole show, is someone is making a joke about Canada Dry.
Wonderful for me because it takes me back many years when I was in Canada on another engagement. Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That's
one
the
of our
place,
great allies, yes.
The wine, the ale, the beer, the scotch.
Tell us, it's getting interesting.
I was there a month, they told me. And we went out there hunting.
Did you ever drink Canada Dry?
No, I always put something in it.
No, it can't be done.
Oh, well, I don't drink it. I freeze it and eat it, actually.
And the joke there is either drinking all the booze in Canada or drinking something that is not a liquid because it's dry, rather than the brand Canada Dry. And this is the only, like, off-the-cuff joke, I think, in the entire show. He responds with, "No, I freeze it and then I eat it." Which, it's at least a yes and, where it's like, I'm taking the premise you threw at me and I'm doing something with it. But it's the only time where I feel like there's any sort of cohesion, where, like, it's not, I tell a joke, you tell a joke, you tell a joke commercial. But, like, You could have had these comics in different rooms just saying these into a camera rather than sat around this table. And as he tries to tell the joke that he wanted to set up, but he got interrupted, because that's important. For the one moment where I feel like there's cohesion and they're talking and like the things are actually interlocking, he seems very annoyed that he's being interrupted, because like, it's my turn to tell a joke. And as he's telling a joke, someone just starts coughing.
Went out, we were looking, at the mises and the mooses.
I think one of the mooses has a cold.
And they just keep it in the show. And that's something I think I really want to talk about, like the feel of this show. It is that kind of political correct, tough crowd with Colin Quinn, bunch of people hanging out chatting feel in terms of how it's shot. But it's very clear that even though it is set up of like, you tell a joke, you tell a joke, you tell a joke, the director and the cameraman are not ready. So, like, it's very often that, like, the camera, which is constantly, like, moving and making these, like, weird pans, will, like, choose a moment to be like, all right, I got all 4 of them in the frame. I'm going to pan this way and just zoom in on this particular person. And, oh, no, this person's talking. Like, it's so, like, incoherent. And it's also strange because, like, one, they're smoking because it's the 60s, but because it was the 60s. Laura wasn't here to do that. But, like, it's always weird to see people smoking on television. And the 4 comics are seated, and then there's, like, a crowd around them, which is similar to how they do it on the Green Room, where, like, the crowd's just kind of sat around because it kind of looks like it's a hangout. But, like, the people around them do not seem interested. It's like, and it tends to be women, because it's mostly male comics, I guess. But it's just like a lot of women hanging out being like, that's funny. And so you're going to do a mother-in-law joke, are you? That's great. And a guy does do a mother-in-law joke. There's a moment, and Dave sets it up and says,
what happened to your mother-in-law when she went down to the beach?
Got a tongue sunburn.
Right. I know he knows the story.
Which I think the joke is either mother-in-laws talk so much that their tongue's always out and then it gets burned, or some sort of like idea that mother-in-laws are mongoloid and their tongue hangs out of their mouth because they're slack-jawed. Either way, mother-in-law humor is not really popular these days. Like, there was a time where all you had to do was insult your wife, and that was how you got laughs. And they do it in this show as well. But that's not really popular these days. But I want to point out the very interesting verbiage that Dave then uses. He sets this guy up with, why does the mother-in-law, or what happened to the mother-in-law that went to the beach? He snaps back immediately with, she got sunburn on her tongue. And Dave then responds, this is a guy that knows his stories. That's very interesting verbiage. Because one, he's not calling it a joke. He's calling it a story, which I think is very odd. Like, the idea that in the 1960s people didn't tell jokes, they told stories. Like, that the word joke wasn't as used. Very odd to me. 2, the idea of the response being, this guy knows his story, is basically him admitting, oh, you heard this joke before. Which means it's neither of their jokes. Like, in stand-up comedy today, people kind of try to own their jokes. This is a joke I wrote, this is a joke that I do. But in the 1960s, apparently you could hear a joke on the street and be like, I'm going to say it on television tomorrow. And that was just it. It just then existed. And the fact that, like, it was a joke that everyone in the room already knew, which means that there are people at home that already knew these jokes that were just like, oh yeah, I heard that one too. A friend of mine told me that at work. And that's just acceptable television. Is insanity to me. I know, 1960s, but still, so weird. There is a few moments where they say things where it's like, can we just discuss jokes for a little bit? But then they never do. they never actually have a conversation about, like, how comedy works. There is, like, a couple jokes at, like, wife's expense, where it's kind of like, I took my dog and my wife and I went for a walk the other day, and a guy came up to me and said, "That's a great animal." And I said, "Don't talk about my wife that way. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha." Like, stuff like that. It's old humor. It doesn't really have a place today. But he then starts to, like, wax poetically about how, like, man, wives of comedians, they have great senses of humor, right? Isn't it great? And then that's it. That's, like, the only real moment. It's like, there's a moment where they're like, we have wives and we like them. And they have to like us because we make fun of them on television. And then immediately it's just off to, like, the way I make it work with my wife is 21 weeks out of the year we go to a steak dinner. She goes on the Tuesday, I go on the Wednesday. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Like, what are these jokes? There is a whole very interesting part where it's very clearly the birth of Porky Pig, and someone does, like, a stuttering joke, and I was like, that's very clearly Porky Pig. But then it's over. Like, then it just cuts to Dave going, so thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to thank my friends, Mel Blanc, Jesse White, and Tommy. He doesn't even give Tommy's last name. That's how bad of a host this guy is. He doesn't even, like, give them their plugs or their credits properly. He's just like, and, Tommy, you can't Google him. It's 1962. But Tommy was here. And I suppose he has a last name. But be sure to join us next week, because this is going to be a show where we have professional and non-professional comedians. Almost implying that this show could have you on it, which I think might have been the goal, is to just be like, yeah, you might be able to do this show. And kind of give that feeling of, like, kind of like when you watch a game show, when you watch something, you're like, I can do this. This is a thing for me. I watch this because I feel like I want to be part of this. But then it's over. And that's the show. There you have it, everybody. This show has been done better 100 times. I would like to say that this show should have been a Stay Tuned, just because I like a lot of the people on the show. I would have loved to have listened to Mo Howard talk about comedy. Like, to have one of the Three Stooges just be like, yeah, this is how I think about comedy is incredible. But in 1962, they didn't really care about insider chat as much. They just wanted to be entertained with laughs. And they don't do a good job with this. Like, the quality of the show in terms of content is bad. It is poorly directed. And sometimes people cough through it. This is a Stay Doomed from me. And that's going to bring a close to Stay Doomed Live. Thank you so much for joining me. I think we had people coming in and out. I think a lot of people joined us after we had watched the show and just watched me talk about a show that they didn't watch, which is fine. Thank you so much for joining me. But this has been another edition of Stay Doomed. If you enjoyed this, be sure to follow me here on Twitch. It is +2 comedy. I stream every weekday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes it's an episode of Stay Doomed, but usually I play video games and solve puzzles here on the stream. And if you like this show, be sure to check out +2 Comedy on YouTube. That's just +2 Comedy. And check out Stay Doomed. The Stay Doomed podcast goes up every Wednesday. So you can find that on YouTube or wherever podcasts are sold. And if you have an idea of a show you'd like to have covered on Stay Tuned, it's got to be a show that ran one season or left. Be sure to send us an email at thestaydoomedshow@gmail.com or tweet at us at StayDoomed or tweet at me. I'm at +2 Comedy. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, stay doomed.